enjoying the vibes and you're enjoying the tunes, but it is now time to tune in to the Black Love Club.
It's the Black Love Club. We on the radio. Turn the speaker up. You could tune in the live stream, but vibing and dial into the station. Join the conversation. Hey yo, say the Black Love Club is on the radio. You could tune into the live stream, just vibing and dial into the station. Hey yo, yeah, the Black Love Club, we on the radio. All right, guys, what's up? It's Nikki with the Black Love Club, and we are back in the building, y'all. So I'm really excited about today. We have an amazing guest who's going to be introduced a little bit later by Richard Roots, and I'm just excited, right? So I want to ask you guys, how have y'all week been going? Y'all, look, today I was actually really tired. It was a little hotter outside, and I think we were out in the sun. We took the kids to the park for a little bit, and I was in that sun. I got a little sleepy, but overall our weekend has been really good. We've had like a lot of meetings and different things like that. Welcome back, Mickey Minnie. Shout out to you. Shout out to everybody else that's in the room. Hey April. Shout out to you. I'm excited for tonight's show as well, y'all. We got an amazing, phenomenal guest. I heard so many great things about her. I can't wait till we get into it. I ain't gonna say too much.
I'm gonna say too much. She gonna leave that to me.
But I'm excited. So, Prime, how was your week?
Man, I had a good week outside of that little monsoon tornado scare we had. That was a little wild.
Yeah.
I took a 12-hour shift, and I wasn't sure how I was going to feel at the end of that shift, but it was funny. The shift went great, and then as soon as we got ready to end the shift, it was like the sun went dark and everything kicked off. I'm in the car, and this water, the rain drifts were so massive. You could visibly see almost waves going through the parking lot.
Oh wow!
And it was insane, and it got hairy there for about a good 7 to 12 minutes or so. Then it kind of died down a little bit, but that's what it's like in Oklahoma.
It seemed like it died pretty quick. We were inside. We just know it got dark. My wife was like, "Put your shoes on."
I was
She was like, "It's dark outside." I was like, "It's like, what this?" I'm confused. I'm like, "What this mean?" Like, we putting our shoes on to go outside? Like, it was just.
It had just got like pitch black. I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, I didn't
know. It got
know.
pitch black like real quick. Like I was in the kitchen and I'm like, cooking, and all of a sudden, it just went dark. Yeah, it wasn't a tornado warning, but it just went dark, and I was like, "Look, because we ain't from around here, so."
I believe a tornado touched down in Tahlequah.
Oh, really? Wow.
Mm-hmm. It was so wild. It was like first it started sprinkling a little bit, and then it literally sounded like the sky just kind of ripped open, and it just it was insane for, like I said, about 12 minutes or so.
Wow.
Enough to make you change all your plans, and then the rest of the evening it was pretty chill.
Well. Yeah. What about you, Richard Roots? How was your week?
Oh, my week was good. We had a lot of outdoor activities. Spent a lot of time with the kids. That's every week, though. We spend a lot of time with the kids. I'm blessed to be able to do that. Yeah, I know that's every day. But I got to see the movie Sinners.
Again?
Oh, you were finally awake
I
through it.
stood up. I fell asleep for one part. No, because we did it.
And I was like, wake up.
This is the definition of insanity. We went to see the latest viewing again. But I stayed up for it this time. And when I got to talk to you about my breakdown, because she knows as soon as I got out of there, I went to calling everybody. I was like, man, I'm happy.
Yeah, we couldn't talk because you hadn't seen the movie.
Yeah. Bro, so I'm going to tell you how bad. I'm going to tell you how bad I was the first time. So you remember that scene when I'm gonna make this real short. You remember
Go
that
ahead.
scene where? Oh, Dan, I can't say this over the radio. I'm talking to you.
All right, yeah.
About later.
We might have to say that for the podcast.
Yeah, but I'm gonna just say this. Yeah, right. I'm gonna just say this. I had only small pieces of what was going on. I don't even know how everybody ended up in the what would you call it, warehouse? I don't know.
The juke joint.
The juke joint. I don't know how everybody ended up there. I didn't know before,
Okay.
but this time I watched the whole thing, and I'm like,
I was gonna say most of them
okay.
walked, but
So like, I'm like, oh, okay. This is how they get. This how they got there. So I started seeing the relationships and all of this stuff. It made a lot of sense. But we're gonna talk about that on the
we're gonna talk
podcast.
about it.
Yeah, that was crazy. But y'all, shout out to everybody that is in the room. You guys, make sure you like it and share it. And we thank you. And again, this is the Black Love Club, where Black love is real. We're here to remind you that Black love is real, Black love is strong, and that Black love still exists. So, hopping into the news portion of the day, y'all, it's been crazy. I don't know if y'all heard about it, and I'm not gonna post a picture because I was like, I'm not about to post black men who did bad things online. I don't know. I was kind of conflicted. Oh.
I don't know how the volume came back on.
But I don't know if y'all heard about it, but there was like 10 inmates in New Orleans that escaped. Yeah, I was like, dang, New Orleans, y'all been doing crazy. Y'all been doing like we've been in the news a little too much. But yeah, so in New Orleans there were 10 inmates that escaped from prison. And it's crazy. And what is even crazier is that they're taking bets. They're like
I was waiting to
pools.
say
They
it.
have
Did you know
pools where people are betting on that.
You know what I thought, and what really bothered me about it is that when this news initially broke, I started seeing posts on Facebook, and they had all of these men's pictures put on there, and then they started Xing them out as they got captured, as they got reclaimed, and I'm something like, is this a game? Is this a joke?
It did actually become a game for everybody.
You
but
know,
yeah.
and it's insane to me that at this stage of the game, you know, black men are kind of treated this way in public.
Yeah.
Like, you don't see that happening to anybody else.
Yeah.
Like, that is insane to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you know, I do have I didn't bet like money, but
Don't tell me you got a pulley.
No, but like I do. I feel like Derek Groves is probably never going to get caught, or he's going to be the last person to get caught. And the sad thing is, you know, then it's like I was looking at also. I was like, well, I wonder what did he do to get in
Prime.
jail.
I'm gonna have to check out bank.
And I was like,
see
it
if
was
she
like
posted
murder,
that.
Man.
and I was like, dang. I'm sitting up here hoping this man stay out the longest. I said, this is sad.
They're getting caught in the.
this is crazy, y'all.
I mean, one of them got caught on the bench in the French Quarter. It's like out of all places.
Nah, he was at the bus stop. He was at the bus stop.
I thought
He
it
was
was in the French
asleep.
Quarter, not in the French Quarters.
Yeah, no, there was another one got caught in the French Quarters. Yeah, there was actually two that got caught in the French Quarters. There was one that got caught in New Orleans East. One, he was on social media doing ratchet stuff with his family, and then so he got
Just
caught.
doing hood rat things with my friends.
Exactly. And then the other one, he got caught sleeping on the bench. Well, he was at the on the bus like bench thingy, and he got caught. But they got 5 still loose, and y'all, it's insane. It's insane. But yes, so those 5 inmates. It's been a crazy week. Also with the rain and everything like that. But then also it was a lot of people say the ancestors are happy and excited because if y'all look at this picture right here that I just pulled up, that is the Antebellum plantation. Is like one of the oldest plantations in Louisiana. And it's burning.
Oh wait, is
So
that the
it
one
caught on
in the
fire.
Garden District?
No, this is in Nottoway.
Oh.
Yeah, this is not
Oh,
in New
okay,
Orleans.
okay.
It's in Louisiana. And it's burning. So people are saying like the ancestors are really, really happy. I don't know, sinners happen and then stuff just start going crazy, right?
Yeah.
I said, wait, what's happening here? Is this like a spiritual message? But then also...
Just a disclaimer: we are not promoting.
no, but
It is kind of
let me tell
activity.
you, people were coming out to this, and there were black people out on the other side of it. They were sitting out on picnic blankets, and they had their drinks, and they were sitting out there and just
And they were
watching
watching
it
the
burning.
fire. Oh yeah.
Yes, I was like, but at the same time, this is a plantation that continued to do tours and different things like that.
Yeah.
So they just made it like look like this was some type of fabulous life. And we had people that was really being hurt and treated very bad and were taken here, brought here, like, and they didn't want to be here, and you are not giving honor to those people and their sacrifices that they did, you know? So it's just like, yeah, watch you burn, right? Because there is a plantation in Louisiana. It's called the Whitney Plantation. Very great plantation. It gives from the slave view, right? And so if you're ever in Louisiana, in the south part of Louisiana, definitely go check it out. It's a little bit out, about an hour outside of New Orleans, in Whitney Plantation. Excellent.
You know what? One time I had to catch myself because one of my friends was like, "What did you just say?" I said, "You know what? The best plantation in Louisiana is Whitney Plantation." He said, "What? The best plantation?" I was like, "You know what? That did sound bad."
Yeah,
but let me tell you about it.
Yeah, but we do have to remember there's people that were still slaves up until the 60s, so that had no idea, even in Mississippi, had no idea that we were free. They've just been working for the same man all this time, and that is crazy. But that was in 1960, like two. I believe 1962, 1963. So that's how deep this is. But also, I mean, what was been going on, which is why I say I feel like the ancestors been doing something, because also in Mississippi, I believe it's the Confederate museum, and that's the picture I got pulled up right there. And it's tree fell on it, and it's like completely destroyed. They said, and it's gone. So people have been like, what has been going on? But there's been so many different things that have just been being destroyed, which I do see is a beautiful thing, because people, I feel like we got to start paying attention to certain things, and we got to start treating everybody with respect, care, and, you know, love. And we gotta get it together, because, you know, people be out here going crazy. And if you haven't heard, there's like all genders are black. Have y'all heard that on TikTok? Yeah. So
no.
He's like, no.
Yeah, that's a new thing that's going on.
Yeah, all genders are black. I haven't found the original video on the explanation. Like, I couldn't find it. I was like, what is the explanation about it? I found it. Give me a quick, what is the explanation?
So they're saying, gender traits are the closest traits to black people. And there's all kind of, if you go down a rabbit trail, rabbit hole. There's like a lot of different that's a lot of stuff they bring towards it. But I wanted to point out the fact that on that last picture, you crossed out the address and the information.
No, it was already crossed out.
I was about to say, I was like, that's a new level of petty.
Oh, I was gonna crop it out.
You can send your donations here, and it's just like blanked out. I'm like, damn, you know what?
I really was gonna crop it out, but then I said, oh, it's already scratched out. So it was on I just pulled it off of social media. So I just was like, hey, they already handled it.
So they were already on level 100 with the pettiness.
Hey.
It wasn't you.
It is what it is. But yeah, all gingers are black, and some gingers have been taking it. They've been like saying the N-word. They've been saying, like, they were like, oh, they've been making like really horrible jokes, like, oh, well, if all gingers are black, all right, kids, I'm going out to get milk. And and I was like, hold up, because the black men are fathers where I'm at. So that's all I know is black men who are phenomenal fathers.
Bruh,
whether they're with the mom of their children or not, they're still phenomenal fathers. They're there and they're showing up. So
they invited y'all to the cookout. Don't mess it up.
We gotta stop inviting people
Don't
to the
mess
cookout.
it up.
But that's another story.
Don't do that.
But anyhow, that was the news portion for today, you guys. I just wanted to leave with something kind of funny. I don't know. But Richard Roots, who we got today?
Yo, I am so excited and honored to introduce our guest. Ebony Jones came on, one of our favorite guests on the show. She came on and she dropped bombs. The first day she came, we invited her back. She dropped bombs again, and she was like, if y'all like what I'm saying, y'all gonna love Tracy. So we reached out to Tracy Jones. So Tracy Jones is the owner and CEO of Trademark Connections. She's a licensed clinical social worker providing custom, creative mental wellness consultations services for individuals and businesses. I did good, huh? I killed that.
Did good.
So, but I'm going to turn it over to Miss Tracy Jones, and I'm going to let her tell us a little bit more about herself because she got a lot of things going on in the city. We are blessed and honored to have her here with us today.
Hey, y'all. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited about being here. Shout out to Ebony. She's dope. But yeah, my name is Tracy Jones. I am the owner and CEO of Trademark Connections to Wellness. And yeah, I am a mental health consultant. I am a therapist. I am a mental wellness creative. I'm a mom. I am a Tulsa native, graduated from McLean, go Scots. And I'm also a world traveler. I love to travel. I just moved back home back in 21, so I've been home for about 4 years now. And I've been doing work with mental health for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah.
So this is home.
Yeah, this is home. I was born and raised out north. My mom lives. Well, I ain't gonna tell all that. That's a lot. But yeah, I'm from the north. I went to Gilcrease, Greeley, Sam Houston, Monroe when they switched it up. So when I saw that they tore down Gilcrease, I cried. It was hard for me.
Yeah.
I love Gilcrease.
Yeah.
Go T-Birds. Anyways, but yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah, this is home. This is home.
That's awesome. I love that.
I feel your pain. They tore down all my schools in New Orleans. I can't say, hey, y'all go check out, my middle school, go check out my elementary school. Yeah. Even the high school I graduated from, and that was in Texas. It's like
Dang.
it's like it's gone.
Moral of the story is don't go to any schools that he's went to.
Don't. Well, you can't. You can't. It's not there anymore. Like my middle school is an apartment complex in New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah, the school I graduated from.
Yeah. Well, we did see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Miss Tracy, your thing is effective. Ebony was like, she's really good on effective communication. Like effective. What drew you to even hosting classes about effective communication?
Yes.
What brought you there?
Yeah, so I started off, I had been working in Germany, working for Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, working with veterans as well as active duty. And I was working in an intensive outpatient treatment program as a facilitator. And we did groups. We did all kinds of groups. I believe we had 11 groups for our 5-week cohorts. And some of the groups that I did were things like, of course, processing trauma. I specialize in trauma, sexual trauma, but also combat trauma. I'm also a veteran. And childhood trauma. And so we did these different workshops, these different groups for the intensive outpatient treatment program. And one of the ones that was one of my favorites, because I had many favorites, but one of my favorites was effective communication. And I thought it was just so interesting how some of these basic things people didn't really know about them. You talk about them, they're like, I never thought about it like that, or I never considered that. And so when I came home, I noticed some of the same issues. I mean, our community has been through it, right? When we're talking about trauma, the trauma is deep, right? And so seeing that, I wanted to figure out what could I do for my community? What could I bring back to my community? And for me, it was like, well, what did I do well when I was overseas? Well, I loved to facilitate workshops. It brought me joy. And so I was like, well, maybe I can bring those type of workshops here in my community. And again, one of my favorites was effective communication. I'm like, everybody can relate to that. And so let's start there. And so I met up with some people in my community and did some free workshops on effective communication.
So how do you think our childhood traumas affect the way we communicate?
Well, listen, the issues with childhood trauma is a lot of time it is untreated. It goes untreated. And what we know about trauma is that if it's not treated, we create maladaptive behaviors in order to get by, in order to survive, right? And so in those maladaptive behaviors, it looks like, okay, what do I need to say to get out of this situation so that I can survive? It may not always be right. The brain wants to protect itself, right? But if it only knows what it knows, and it only knows what it knows, right? And so if the person that has been taking care of the person that is experiencing the trauma also experienced trauma, so then you're passing down some of these behaviors. And with that, you're passing down these maladaptive ways of being. You're not really learning the effective ways to communicate. You're not learning the effective ways to work through the trauma. There's a lot of covering things up, a lot of hiding things. Let's not talk about it. Don't tell people my business. Like all these kinds of things that happen that keeps people from healing and from looking at it so that, they can understand what is the right way. And I know a lot too in our community. It's a whole lot of because I said so, growing up, I know, our parents was like, stay in a kid's place, but yeah, they didn't know the right kinds of behaviors or how to teach them the right way until they passed those down to us as well and kind of became this thing,
Yeah, I kind of feel like we're walking into like a generation like of kids, because like a lot of parents are making sure that we communicate correctly, we even communicate to our kids correctly. And that's like one thing that we really try to work on, because as we've learned, we want to make sure that we have the time to explain to our kids like, well, what they did was wrong. And we find like that really works very well, like sitting down and explaining. Back in the day we were just like, we got spanked for everything, right? Nobody said, and I often say our parents didn't have the luxury of sitting down and explaining, because a lot of times they worked several jobs or whatever, or they were single moms, or they were just doing it all. But it's just like they didn't have the luxury of explaining. And also, like you said, they didn't have nobody showed them, nobody was teaching that. So, like, what are some ways you can tell parents how to effectively communicate to their kids? Because I feel like that's a big one, too.
Yeah. So, one thing that you said that I thought was interesting was that, we got whoopings. We did, right? We talked about that trauma, how it's passed down. Well, think about during slavery times, whenever you didn't listen to your master, what did they do? They whooped you.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's just been passed down. But I think in order to build the type of kids that we want to build, we have to sit down and listen to them. We have to allow them to explore. Right. And, a lot of times it's this thing like, oh, well, I don't want my kids disrespecting me or that sort of thing. I believe that children are going to, first of all, if they feel safe with you, then they're going to try you. They're going to try different things. You're the person that they're going to explore the world with, right? If they feel safe with you, then they're going to try it with you. You don't want your child saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, to everybody that they meet as they grow up. You want them to ask questions, right? Yeah. And so if you're not fostering that environment, if you don't have that environment where you're allowing them to question what you're telling them to do, then you're not really giving them the ability to explore the world in a healthy way.
Right. I think you're like grooming them to be gullible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because kids
to just
aren't
go along to get along. Yeah.
Kids aren't like gullible.
No.
They're laughing because we had this whole conversation about gullible like on the last show.
I'm sorry, don't take me serious on that.
Ridiculous.
But I am serious. Kids aren't gullible, but I was using it as an opportunity to mess with Prime, but he explained himself. I'm messing with him. But that's true though. We raise our kids in that fashion too. So I mean it's refreshing hearing you say that. Like I tell people all the times that, our kids will question you.
Yeah.
In a respectful way. But I can't necessarily say in a respectful way because I don't think it's just not a disrespectful way. Right. Some people may consider it to be disrespectful,
but it's like literally kids are. I feel like they're just asking because it's like, or they're just saying it because
they need to understand.
Yeah, they're not trying to be disrespectful. And remember, as kids, it was like, why are you talking back? It was like, just literally asking.
No, there are
Question,
times.
you know?
Right.
There are times where we say because we say so, and that's in those moments where we feel like, okay, this is urgent. That's not enough time for me to explain. But you need to be as my child. You need to be able to trust me enough and understand enough. If I say because I say so, the questioning needs to stop there.
Well, what you're explaining right now, you say, because I say so, you're explaining aggressive communication, right? Or it can be considered assertive, but let's play a little devil's advocate. When we're talking about the different styles of communication, you have passive communication, you have aggressive communication, you have assertive communication. There's also passive aggressive communication, right? And it's kind of like what I'm hearing you say is if it's an emergent situation and I tell you to do something right now, more than likely it's because I'm trying to save you, right? If you got a kid in the middle of the street and you see a car coming, they got their headphones on, you're not going to be like, oh, little Timmy, it would be a great idea if you get out of the street. Boy, get your behind out the street, right?
Yeah.
You're going to scream it. You may even run over there and grab them up. That's aggressive communication. And so depending on the situation, depending on, the context of what's going on, all styles of communication are necessary. And so it's important for us as parents to understand, okay, what style of communication do I need to use in this particular moment? Right? Do I need to be more aggressive? Do I just need to be assertive? And when we talk about aggression versus passive is more so like not saying anything, kind of allowing them to do, as some people say, your kids run all over you, and there's a balance, right? It's really all about balance. But when we're talking about passive communication only identifies the needs of the kids, right? It's only their needs are important, right? Your needs don't matter, or your wants don't matter. If you're communicating more aggressively, only your needs and wants matter. Their needs and wants don't matter. Okay, but with assertive communication, all needs are considered. Right? All needs are considered. And the reason why I said it's more aggressive, if you yell at him and tell him to get out of the street, you don't care about what he wants in that moment. You care about not wanting him to get hit by a car. Right. He probably just want to play, right? He want to, continue to stay in the street, but you want him to survive. And so in that moment, you would be a little bit more aggressive, but it's necessary, right? But if you're going to have a conversation with him about staying out of the street, you're not going to want to have an aggressive conversation with him, because a lot of times that will close them up. They won't listen to you, right? They won't pay attention. And so you do want to be more mindful. I like to ask my kids questions, right? What do you think about going in the middle of the street? How do you, what comes up for you when you think about playing in the middle of the street? What are some things that you look out for, right? And so that we can develop that critical thinking. A lot of kids growing up, they want to be autonomous, right? They're growing to be their own person, to be their own human. And so if you're constantly telling them what to do, naturally they're going to want to rebel. Right. But if you have them come up with it on their own, then it's accepted more.
So I was doing a little studying because I didn't know like effective communication was such a big issue in the Black community.
Yeah.
Now, when I say I didn't know, I'm not saying I didn't realize or recognize that we had it as an issue, but I didn't know it was such a big issue. So a study from the National African American Relationship Institute found that 64% of Black couples say they feel unheard. Why do you feel like that is an issue with within the Black community, within our relationships, where we feel like we're not being heard? Why is it so hard?
Well, first of all, many of us aren't taught about what values are. So a lot of times we get into these relationships, we don't understand our own values, and then we get in a relationship with somebody that we don't really understand their values. Oh, they're cute, or they like to cook, or they, make a lot of money, or these kinds of things. What about trust? What about emotional safety? right? What are the values that that you're aligning with? So what does the alignment look like? And the problem with not understanding that is there's a huge stigma in the Black community regarding mental health. So, going to go and talk to a therapist about understanding more about what your values are is stigmatized. Why would you go and talk? Don't be bringing nobody in my house. I don't want to talk to nobody, that sort of thing. And so where do they learn that? They learn that through their parents or their friends or their, whoever, but they're not learning it in a healthy way, right? We haven't learned that as a community in a healthy way. And so I think what's happening is because of those maladaptive behaviors that have been passed down, what we notice a lot is what we call assertive strategies that are being used when we're communicating with each other. And assertive strategies look like discounting, right? Invalidating the other person's idea of, what they're saying, invalidating them. Looks like withdrawing, right? Okay, whatever you say. I don't care. Whatever you think, right?
Yeah.
Derailing, right? I come to you with an issue, and now instead of staying focused on that issue, you want to bring up something I did last week. Where it would have been great to talk about that thing last week, right? But now when I'm bringing this thing up to you, you're derailing the conversation now. And so now it becomes this argument, right? Because now I feel defensive, and now I have to protect myself, and now you have to protect yourself. I mean, the way that we use certain words, you do this and you do that and you do that. And that sounds, that's like somebody with a knife coming at you over and over and over again.
Yeah. Right.
And if somebody's coming at you with a knife over and over again, what are you going to do?
Attack.
You're going to attack back. You're going to probably put your hands up. You're probably going to move around, right? You're not going to stay in that situation.
Right.
And so that's what happens with communication. There's these aversive strategies that are happening where you're belittling your job. You just stupid. I don't even know why I deal with you, right? Those kinds of things. But those are the things that we have learned just from those maladaptive behaviors that have been passed down to us. And nobody is telling us that those strategies are negatively impacting our relationships. And sometimes it's because maybe the person that's using the aversive strategies, maybe, there's some there, right? What they're saying makes sense. However, it's the way that you're saying it, that's causing the issues, that's causing the problems. And so it's important to identify what type of strategies you're using, what form of or style of communication you're using whenever you are communicating.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear someone when they're using those U-terms, because I feel attacked.
Yeah.
Like whenever somebody's saying you this, I feel like you're saying to me, I'm no good. I'm this. And then those yous are always, like if it's a personal relationship, then it's always followed behind with always. You always. And I don't think people realize how much damage that creates when you say when you say you always, then what you're saying is whatever comes behind that, you're saying that's who I am. Because if I do this 90% of the time, then that's who I am. So if you're saying you always lying, you never listen, all of this stuff, so you're basically telling me that I'm a bad listener. That's all I'm hearing. You're a bad listener. You're a liar. You never there for me. So all of the times I'm there for you, I'm like, well, dang, I don't know if this relationship has even worked anything.
Right.
Just the other day, I was playing basketball, but it wasn't even an intense game because I'm like kind of injured, so I can't play really. I can't really get active. But this guy was like, he wanted to fight me, and I was so confused. Everybody was confused. It was like, what's going on? Where this came out? Where did this come from? So I went up to him and I asked him. I was like, look, man, we're both grown men. We shouldn't be fighting. And I asked him, I said, what is it that I did that made you feel like I wanted to fight you? Because if you like, let's fight, something made you think I wanted to fight you. And I had a conversation with another brother who was like playing with us. And, it's funny that we're talking about effective communication today because we discussed it and it was like, what the issue is? The issue is that a lot of young black people, especially men, well, I ain't gonna say especially men, but I would say from my experience, I've seen this issue with a lot of men Well, we don't know how to communicate. So when we are enraged, because that's what it was, he didn't know how to communicate what his problem was with me. He felt like I was playing rough on him, I guess. I don't know what it is. I have to guess because he didn't communicate it. So if he would have communicated, hey man, you playing a little rough, I would be like, okay, I'll back off a little bit. Or somebody else could check you. But that issue leads to, with men, especially young black men, it leads to a lot of us going to an early grave or being in prison.
Yeah.
So I mean, you already dropping a lot of gems. I'm like, dang, I should have came with a notebook. I'm happy this is being recorded because you can always go back and like write this stuff down because you dropping a whole lot of gems. I'm mad that we didn't know you sooner because this thing that we're about to have this weekend, I would have loved to have you hit there. But I know Prime got something he about to spit out.
Oh, no. I was just listening, taking in. I like the direction. I love the insight that you're getting. I think what this makes me think, though, is I wonder how much of this is just us not being attentive. Just us not reflecting on our individual actions and then, actually taking the time to care about the person sitting across from us. Because I think in many ways, we don't need the terms, we don't need these fancy explanations to understand that if I say this and this person responds this way, that it has to do something to what I said. And I don't think we need an explanation or a study to figure out that typically if I'm emotional and I act through my emotions, that I'm usually going to make the situation worse. But I just think we're at a place where there is such a lack of accountability. And we're also to a point isolated. We all kind of try and exist in our own bubble to where we're only kind of focused on how we feel. And we're not thinking about how that affects that other person across from us. And so I think that these tips are good, and I don't question what you're saying. I just think it really just stems back to the point that we have to get better as being people. We have to get better at being with each other and how we treat each other.
What you just described was emotional intelligence.
Oh, my favorite term.
Yeah, being emotionally intelligent. And not everybody grew up emotionally intelligent. Not everybody understands how to be not everybody understands how to be self-aware. And that's a component of emotional intelligence, right? How do I look within? And one of the reasons why is because they're afraid of being vulnerable. Right? Now, vulnerability is one of those words where it's just like, not me, not today, not never. Because what does vulnerability mean?
That you're going to give people access to your life, to some of the things about yourself that you're insecure about, and you are afraid of the possibility that they will one day use it against you.
Yeah, vulnerability is authentic. It's real.
It is, yeah.
Right? You're taking that mask off, right? And a lot of us only do that, especially black men.
Right.
Do that with their moms, right? Some with their boys, depending on how, what the relationship is like with their boys. But I know that there are a lot of young African-American men who only feel comfortable being vulnerable with their mom if they have, of course, a non-toxic relationship, because that's an issue, but vulnerability, right? And if I can't be vulnerable in this situation, then that means that I can't identify my emotion. And even if I can identify my emotion, I'm not going to share that with you. You're going to see me as what?
Are we talking about like from a woman's perspective? Or?
Male's perspective. We're talking
emotional.
About emotional, weak.
Weak, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think as men, typically are better served to be vulnerable with their male circle. because they understand the plight. You know, we're going through the same journey. We understand it sucks. Nobody really cares outside of us. And more often than not, we're going to remind ourselves that searching for an excuse or something or someone to blame isn't the way out of this.
I think that's with like mature men though, because like we did have like stigmas and mantras that we had to entertain growing up, where you know, if a man is like too emotional, then if a man is expressing himself, then he's emotional. If a man is like complaining, then he's feminine, and all of these things. You know, be a man. All of these mantras we had to, you know, live through.
You know, but I don't know that I felt that from my boys, my guys.
Sounds like you have
I've seen, and you know, I've been around a lot of men. I've played sports and, you know, various things. But, you know, I've been around guys who've been through some things. I've had guys cry. I've had guys complain. I've had guys crash out. And, you know, we've dealt with that, you know, whether, you know, their sister was dealing with some domestic violence or, you know, they lost their mom.
Yeah.
You know, we've experienced those things. And I can't think of a time where it was like, you know, a guy came and he was literally at that point where we know he's not able to control himself. Like, he's just got to get this out. It was never a situation where we was going to take that as the opportunity to kick him. You know, the only time I've ever seen that truly expressed is typically when it's either out in public or when there's women around.
I have seen that dynamic, because there is this idea that men have to be something else. They have to impress or, you know, show a different side of themselves, show that they're strong, show that they're worthy, you know, these kinds of things around women. And I'm glad that you have that experience with your boys. I think that it's important to have a circle of friends around you, whether it be male or female, that you can be vulnerable with, because that's when you learn the healthy ways of communicating, is when you're around your people that you can be vulnerable with. Right. And so that's great that you have that. And I encourage everybody to find that. But I think in order to find that, you have to first understand yourself. Right. And what that looks like. Because sometimes people get into these cliques. Right. These popular cliques or these, you know, these sorts of things. And then it's kind of based off of, well, you know, who has more of this and who has that. And it gets real weird.
I feel you on that.
You know?
For me, I'm very particular about when I use the term friend. And, you know, I talk to my son all the time. I was like, you overuse the term friend. Just because you guys do things together, just because you guys have similar interests does not make him your friend.
Right.
And so when I say that I have a friend, and, you know, so just to give you an example, I was in 7 schools before I reached the 7th grade. So from an early age, I had to get used to making connections, breaking those connections, and then reestablishing them. And so I think that's part of why I have almost like this perfect stranger kind of persona, in the sense that a lot of people will, throughout my life, will just kind of come up to me and just bare their souls to me. And at the very first, it was very weird. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know, it's like, you probably shouldn't tell me or anybody else what you just told me, but I ain't gonna tell nobody else because they ain't gonna believe me anyway. But that said, I think it's because that I've had to develop that a way to bring people in, but also not hold them so closely that I can't let them go. But the reason I say that is, throughout those experiences, I've gotten to see a lot of different people in a lot of different scenarios. And so you're right, the popular cliques, you're in that for a status. Those aren't your friends. Now that's gonna be a recipe for the disaster no matter what you do. But I do think if you can find you some genuine friends, especially your male friends, they're not gonna be in a rush to judge you for that, because they understand that.
Yeah, I think too, though. I think that it's important that if you're even in a healthy clique like that, right, with your boys or with your girls, it's important to hold each other accountable as
100%.
well, right? And I think that you know, even as we're talking about communication, being able to communicate, you know, what I saw that was an issue, right? Because sometimes you see your friends are in these sort of toxic relationships with their, you know, significant others or whatever, and that's kind of just allowed, right? It's kind of like, oh, you my boy no matter what, or I'm rocking with you no matter. I'm team you, I'm team her all day, don't matter, right?
Yeah.
And that's great to have that bond, but I think it's also important in terms of being more healthy to be able to hold each other accountable for the maladaptive behaviors that they're showing in their relationships. That doesn't happen enough.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because we talking about friendships, and I know we got on the male friendships, but a lot of women struggle later in life with having friends. I feel like, as you're talking of, like, I feel like that has to do with effective communication and different things. Like, what are your thoughts on, like, why a lot of women basically fail to have those close relationships later in life, and they struggle even with that communication side?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of values. I think, as you grow up, you start to realize what matters to you the most, and it's not necessarily, I've been knowing them for a gazillion years. No, it's like, I have to live my life a certain type of way, the way that I want to live my life. The more I learn about myself, the more I grow, the more that I heal, I realize that this relationship is not it's not serving me. I don't align with this relationship. And so I think that, as we grow, we start to mature in that way, and we start to see, okay, well, these connections aren't really, they're holding me back more than they are allowing me to be free and be who I need to be for me. I feel judged. I feel, these sorts of things in this relationship. And so there's a pullback, there's a withdrawal, because then when you try to have the conversation, there's a lot of blaming and a lot of shaming and a lot of, derailing and these aversive strategies that come up. I think it all comes down to, it really just depends on the click. It depends on the relationship. If you've been, in a relationship, with a person for umpteen years, and you guys are, growing in the same way, then more than likely that relationship is going to stay together, even if you guys are on different sides of the world, the relationship will stay together. But if you have one person staying here in this space, communicating maladaptively, using these adversive strategies and not growing, don't see anything wrong with it, no accountability, you can't have conversations with them, then eventually we're like, listen, I'm raising my own kids. I have my own thing going on. I want to, do all these different things. And this relationship with you is holding me back. And so I need to let it go because it's keeping me from being who I need to be.
That's good, because I was literally about to ask you that question, like, because I think that's a lot of people's fear. Like when you mentioned effective communication, what happens when I start learning how to effectively communicate? I think when people entertain that thought, there's an immediate fear that comes along with that.
Absolutely.
What if my spouse or the person that I'm in a relationship with take advantage of that?
Yeah.
Because effective communication looks like, okay, that means that I'm not going to be the one who's hostile, slinging these low blows and stuff like that. And that's all all your life. Mm-hmm. Swinging below the belt, going off into a tantrum. And the person that you are with doing the same thing. So y'all used to spawn in this toxic relationship. So the moment you start learning these effective communications techniques, because you have been going to Trey connections, right?
That's right.
You've been going to her cohort, so you're like learning all this stuff. What happens then? Like, what happens? Like, how do someone address that fear? Like, what would you say to encourage that person?
To have the conversation, have the hard talks. Mm-hmm. It's important to have those hard conversations, and give the person, be patient, right? Be patient with the person. Especially like if you're married, and you got kids together and you got all these things together, you want to be patient with that person. You want to try, you want to lead by example, right? Don't go into it like, well, I'm learning all these techniques and you're just doing da-da-da-da-da. Well, my love, you're doing exactly what you don't want him to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think it's important to show up the way that you want them to show up. Right. And have that patience. But then, I know, sometimes, that gets old. Like the other person may not catch up to that. And that's when you have to do some self-searching, because now if it's turning into resentment, now it's turning into depression, now it's turning into these things where you can't even look at yourself in the mirror. That's when you need to reevaluate. What am I doing? Who am I living for at this point? At this point, right. Because realistically, you're more than just a wife or a husband or a mother or a, whatever your career path is. You're more than just those things, right? And so it's time to hone in. It's time to look on the inside, because what happens if you're not living your truth, if you're not living your authentic self, your body starts to do things to reject what you're doing. Right. This is why we see things like depression. I actually had a conversation last night about depression, because depression comes when you're not living your truth. It comes when you're not living the way that your spirit is telling you to live, when you're going against your spirit constantly, consistently. And then all of a sudden the body starts to shut down. Everything begins to shut down, and you're wondering why you can't get up.
Right.
That's great. I got a question for you.
We're going to go into prime time
yes,
after this.
as we go into
April
prime
gonna
time.
Get us.
And so this is going to lead into prime time. So for the purpose of this, I don't want you to show the post. We're going to say that for another day.
Okay.
Do you feel that there is value in arguments?
Arguments is a strong word. I think it's important to understand that you're gonna disagree. You're your own person. That whole, and I get it. Two becomes one.
Well, I'm more or less asking.
Speak your mind.
Basically, what I'm saying is that I'm talking about an emotionally charged confrontation, typically between two people.
Listen,
do you feel like there is a positive that can come out of those situations?
Not if the emotions are too high. It's important to understand where you are emotionally, how, and that's one of the things also that I teach in the class is distress tolerance. Right? Or being able to identify what level, well, first of all, what is the emotion? What are you feeling? Because, child, you fired up, right? Yeah. But where are you? Like, on a scale from 1 to 10, where are you at? Because if you at a 10, we might need to take a break, right? Yeah. Let's, it might be a 5-minute break, right? I might need to walk around the block. I might even need to sleep on it. So even this idea of, don't go to bed, sleep, I don't believe in that. Yeah. Because sometimes you might need to sleep on that thing.
Sometimes
it's that
you
serious.
Might need to sleep on it.
But I think it's important not to have these back and forths when your emotions are too high, because what we know about emotions when they're too high is it's very difficult to, be able to process information.
Exactly. You
right?
lose what you're talking about anyway.
You absolutely do.
Okay, good. So the last thing I'm going to ask you before we jump into that is do you believe that arguments or do you think men value arguments?
That is such an overgeneralization. Do I believe men value? I believe that there are some men that value different things. Some men that want to argue. Some women that want to argue. It depends on how they were raised and how they view communication.
Women need to argue?
I think that women want to be heard and understood. And I think everybody wants to be heard and understood. And I think that, women are given, and this is, I don't like to say stuff like women are more this, women are, I believe that it's more acceptable for a woman to talk about their feelings and talk about what's coming up for them. And so we have more practice doing that. Whereas men is like, just get it done, just make it happen. And so you have less, you don't have as much practice with communicating that. Right. And so we're just trying to explain to you what's going on in our mind. And you like, let's just do it. Let's just do it. What do I need to do?
Okay. All right. No. I think I love that answer. So, can we cue the music real quick?
Yeah, about to cue.
I love how you just explained that.
That was perfect.
You just broke that down so clean. I mean,
Very
it was just
clean.
pristine.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. But all right.
Thank you.
And that was a rapid fire question from the
All right,
Prime,
y'all,
too, man.
yes.
He be sending them.
Prime time with Edgar Prime, y'all. Here's the pose.
You're not supposed to show the post.
Oh,
We just
Yeah,
had
he
that
said,
talk.
don't show the
I
post.
thought you been like, don't show right now.
Hey,
Y'all
he,
did not
he
see
just
that.
hit you with
Nobody
what you
seen
hit me
that.
with in the beginning.
Nobody
He said, we
seen
just
that.
had that talk.
Y'all, anybody got the Black Men in Black thing so I can just like scan
You know
everybody
what? I
minds?
have it, too. I actually have it.
Look.
All right.
All right, go ahead.
So,
Prime.
all right. So for Prime Time with Aga Prime, one thing I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I was wondering if arguments in general are necessary. I think, especially in the Black community, in a lot of our media, and maybe us growing up, we're used to seeing people argue. We're used to seeing people work through those disagreements. We also understand, as Tracy mentioned before, that it's kind of more socially acceptable for the woman to be a little bit more emotionally charged, but we've grown up around both men and women arguing, and so I think we've developed this mindset that that's a necessary action. But I would pose the alternative and say that I believe an argument in and of itself is a choice. You have to choose to take that manner of action against that other person. And so I believe that if you do care, and I believe it starts with the man, you must set boundaries that this is not how we are going to go about discussing or resolving conflicts. That has to be something you establish up front, that that's not how we do things. And that's going to take you saying, hey, I understand you're emotional right now, but you, as you mentioned before, you on 10. We not getting nowhere when you on 10. I'm gonna need you to I need you to calm down. That might not be what you want to hear at the time. If I gotta leave, whatever you gotta do, you have to set that standard that you're not gonna have that communication. And it's also on the woman in that same scenario. She's not gonna have to do it as much because as the man, you're gonna be establishing that boundary. And more often than not, she's gonna be the one who's gonna more likely hit 10. But there will be times where you are also going to come in emotionally compromised. There will still be times where you may come in guns blazing because none of us are perfect. Circumstances happen to all of us. And so that's the time where your partner is going to reinforce that boundary and say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but you are not the man that I'm accustomed to dealing with. That's not how we do things here. And that's something that as two partners, you can come together to keep those arguments out of place, because a disagreement is going to happen. It's necessary, it's healthy, but an argument is a choice. That said, I will leave you with this logic. I don't believe men in general value arguments in the sense of an emotionally charged confrontation. I don't believe that's one way that we really like to express ourselves. We tend to find that as aggressive, and so it's not as conducive to be that charged in a conversation typically. However, I do think on one side, I do believe women have a need to have that form of expression. So how do we combat a situation where one side doesn't want to participate and the other side has a need for that? I believe that this is something I want you to consider and something I want you to try, especially if you tend to have arguments, is this is a good opportunity to tease your woman. Women are very fond of things that are specific to them. And so you already pay attention to her. And as men, we typically don't like to aim under the belt anyway. So find something unique to her that you can pick at a little bit. You're not trying to ruin her self-esteem. You're going to keep it playful. But if you do it in the correct way, you'll give her a chance to really get emotionally in the argument without it being about something that can create a problem in your relationship, because she's gonna need to get that out. And I think part of the reason arguments are never about what the argument started about is because as men, we try and treat our wives like other men. And so we look to create a solution for that problem. But if they have a need to express in this fashion, what we are doing as a consequence is we're cutting off her means of that expression. And when we do that, she has to get it somewhere. it has to come out someplace else. And so it may be a random, why didn't you take the trash out today? And that gives her the reason to incite that argument. But because she started it and is going to creep up to 10, now gloves are off. But I think if you can give her that means of expressing it in a way that's not going to cause a rift, particularly if you can do it in a way that is fun and playful, you'll both be better served and you won't have to live through a lot of those toxic arguments.
Nah, hold up.
Wait. I pulled out my Men in Black
like, is this the part
so-
where we chime in?
We can chime in because Prime, you was speaking and there was some face. You already know it, when it's prime time. It like the gloves are coming off. But come on.
Oh yeah.
I saw her.
Hey,
I saw her over there.
we gonna start calling it gloves off with prime time.
I'm gonna put like some
it can't
gloves
be,
on your thing.
It
Like,
can't be prime.
I'm with it.
time
I'm with it.
With Edgar Prime no more. It's gloves
come
off.
on, Miss Tracy.
Because here's the thing, my love. If I'm emotionally charged, right? If I'm going up, it's because I'm feeling unheard or misunderstood.
Is it always the case, though, is my question.
Well, we're speaking in, again, we can't always say that, right? There's many different things that cause arguments, right? And so sometimes, when this whole idea that women need to argue is crazy. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that men are trying to dead it, whereas the woman is trying to get her point across or because that's how, from my perspective, I think in the situation like that, instead of making it worse by joking, because now you ain't even taking me seriously. I'm sitting up here pouring out my heart out. Now you want to joke about it. What is that? I think in order to, the proper way to address something like that is own it. Be accountable. Just, you know what, baby? I didn't. My bad. I forgot to take out the trash. You're right. I apologize.
I understand what you're saying, and I think the difference in how we see this is that I think for men, we tend to look at emotions as good and bad. Some emotions are good, some emotions are bad.
Okay.
I think with women, on the other hand, it's a spectrum. So there's positive emotions and there's negative emotions.
I'm going to stop you right there, Mr. Prime, because I'll tell you right now, I don't believe in good or bad or positive or negative emotions. Emotions are alarms that are going off in your body that's trying to tell you something.
But don't you have alarms that tell you something's good versus alarms that tell you something's bad?
You have undesirable and desirable.
I mean, that's semantics.
Oh, maybe, right? But let's say fear. People would say that fear is a negative emotion or a
100%.
bad emotion. Is it?
I think it's a negative emotion. It's just not a positive emotion.
Is it,
that
though?
That doesn't mean it doesn't have value.
Well, so let's talk about fear, right? If fear didn't exist, how would I protect myself? How would people protect themselves if there's no fear? We were talking earlier about, our kid being out in the street. It's fear that caused me to say, get your behind out the street, right? If fear didn't exist, I probably would just be like, I probably need to talk to him about getting out of the street.
I don't know. Fear's a little bit more I think fear's a little bit more complicated than that. I think you're talking about caution, and I agree that initial response is evolutionary.
Where does caution come from?
So a caution comes from your sixth sense that danger is around you.
Exactly.
That's not necessarily fear. Fear is the attachment to a future event that may or may not ever exist. You're afraid of something you don't know can or will happen.
That's a distorted thought. That's trauma.
But that's fear. That's what fear is.
No, I believe that not addressing fear can build that, can bring that. If you keep avoiding these emotions, they turn into something. Right?
True.
If you keep saying, this is a negative emotion, so I can't experience anger is a good one. Everybody's like, stay away from anger. Child, anger is driving some of these things that we're having. Anger is one of the reasons why we're not in chains no more.
Anger is a very important emotion.
Very important emotion. It's not a negative emotion. It's not a bad emotion, right? Now, can it be used poorly? Absolutely it can. Can fear be used poorly? Absolutely it can. It's undesirable, right? Nobody wants to be angry. Nobody wants to feel fear. They're undesirable. But these emotions, if you tap into it, I'm not saying sit in it. Because sitting in it, that's not good for anybody. It doesn't do anybody any good.
Right.
But it's important to tap into them. And sometimes you got to sit in it for a little bit to understand it. Because what we have to understand is that our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors are all connected, right? And if I'm feeling something, this is people that know me, they know I do this all the time. I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way. And I'll say, because what's the thought, right? But if you don't spend time in that feeling, understanding where that feeling is coming from, you won't understand the thought. And if you don't understand the thought, how can you control that emotion? Now that emotion is controlling you.
Well, I would say emotions are typically reactive. So just because you feel an emotion does not compel you to act. It may make it very enticing to act, but it does not compel you to act. And to counter what you were saying about fear, I think that the feeling you're getting is caution. For instance, if I set an alligator on this desk, you would be cautious of the alligator. But the reason you would fear it is because you would picture it biting you. That is the difference. And so what I'm basically saying is that I think we've gotten too focused on the words, and communication is only about 20% of what we say is more like 80% body language.
Facts, nonverbals.
And so the reason I say that is that I think it makes a lot more sense that we can handle the disagreements that we have an actual problem to solve. Like if we actually are working with a problem, we can handle that as adults. But if we just work with the logic for a second, that as a woman, you have a need to express yourself in this way, then it makes more sense why we will occasionally have these blow up arguments that none of us can figure out where they stem from.
I think that's too simplistic to say. I think it depends on the situation. It depends on what's being said. What is the conversation? I think it's irresponsible to just say that that's what it is. I think it's very important to know what the argument is. There's so many things. There's so much trauma. People are walking around unhealed all day, every day. We're talking about aversive strategies all day, every day. And with that, if that's the way that you're communicating, what I'm hearing, what that sounds like to me is you're invalidating that woman.
On the contrary, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm basically saying is that we know that there's trauma. We know that we're all unhealed. And more often than not, people who get together today are typically going to have some sort of trauma. They're going to be unhealed to a certain degree. We ain't going to be able to fix everybody today, tomorrow, or next month.
True.
That said, we do have to find a way to work together.
Right.
And so what I'm basically saying is that I believe that that women have a need to express themselves in an emotional exchange.
I think that a woman feels the need to feel safe and secure in a conversation, depending on that conversation. And if that woman doesn't feel safe and secure, she's going to do whatever she needs to do to feel safe and secure.
I agree with you.
And so sometimes that looks like expressing myself more, because in this conversation, I don't feel validated. I don't feel heard. I don't feel understood. And so whatever I need to do in order to validate myself, or so that I can feel like I'm being understood, so I can be heard, I'm going to say what I need to say.
Yeah. I think we've off on the wrong foot in that I'm not saying you tease your woman if she's bringing something to you. That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
What I'm basically making the argument of is that's why I laid out at first how we avoid getting into arguments in the first place.
Okay.
We make a choice not to do that. And we respect each other.
Yeah, boundaries are important. Absolutely.
That's how we avoid the argument.
Yep.
What I'm basically saying, though, is if we avoid the argument, and again, we're working with this idea that you have a need for this expression, that need is unmet if we avoid all of the arguments, because you don't have a means to express yourself that way. That is why I brought up the teasing. I'm not saying doing this in the middle of the argument. Of course, this is going to blow everything up. But what I'm saying is this is a way that you can interject this into your interactions with your woman. This puts a focus directly on her, and it allows her to, in a comfortable, safe environment, have that interaction with you.
I think so. What I'm hearing you say is that you believe that women just have this innate thing within them that they just have to argue, that they have the need to argue.
Yes.
Okay, I disagree with that, and I think that's probably the disconnect is because I absolutely don't think that that's true. Chad, I value my peace. I don't want to argue with you.
I agree.
Right? Most women that I know, the women that I surround myself with, child, I don't have time to argue with you. Okay? They're going to protect their peace because if I got to argue with you to get a point across, then why are we even having this conversation? I need to be in a conversation or a relationship with somebody that is open to my ideas. I don't have to argue with you because you're already open to what I'm saying. You want to know. You're asking me questions. Right? As opposed to just trying to shut me down because you think I want to argue. You're curious to know where my mind is going. Like, you're attracted to where my mind goes. And I think a lot of times men are not attracted to women.
I mean, we're not attracted to that, no.
I mean, you know, we have these minds and they go and we, like I said, we want to be understood. We want to be heard. We want to be, you know, these things. And a lot of times men aren't attracted to that. And so say that, you know, say that.
Well, I mean, that doesn't help you though.
What doesn't help you?
I mean, that don't help me if I tell you this is just not attractive.
Y'all, we gonna have to.
We gonna have to do
this.
a part 2 of this.
They was
We gotta
already
do
in the
this
conversation.
Look, we
gotta come back.
We're gonna have to have you back, but the chat was going crazy.
Yeah,
man. But we
was
gotta
always like
we
this.
gotta do the blackout, and this
Oh.
time I'm gonna do the blackout a little bit different because I wanted to hear a response from you. So the blackout is normally my portion, where I wrap it up. I take everything and I tie everything together. But I think that the viewers and the listeners could get more out of you answering my final question.
Okay.
All right, you gonna cue that music? No music? Nah, it's fine. We'll just go with it. We're gonna go with it. No wrap up. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Right.
So, my question to you: if you can do 3 commandments for effective communication from Trey Mac Connections,
Yes.
we would love to hear it, and that'll be our closing.
My 3 commandments would be active, mindful listening. They would be accountability, own it, and patience.
And you know what? One more thing, because I forgot. Before the show, we were talking to you, and you mentioned that you have something going on this weekend.
I
Sunday.
do. Yes. So I am having an effective it's an intro to my effective communication classes, because usually my effective communication classes are cut up into 3 different workshops. Okay. Because we get deep and there's a lot of work. We work in these workshops. Okay. You're going to have homework. There's going to be worksheets. We're going to do role plays. Like, I want to make sure that you walk away understanding how to communicate effectively. Okay. And so they're usually 2-hour workshops, and there's 3 of them. This particular workshop is a basic intro, right? And this is just to kind of get people to kind of know how I teach, what I'm teaching, you know, how much they feel like they can learn. So I'm kind of barely touching the surface on a few different things I'm actually going to go over in the workshops that are to come. And so it's going to be on Sunday, the 25th, I believe that is, from 12 to 2. And I have it listed on my Instagram at Trey Mac Connections. Trey Mac is TRAMCK Connections, CONNECTIONS. On Instagram, you can go on there. There's an Eventbrite. You can sign up. The class is only $35. I am also a continuing education provider, and so if you need CEs for your profession, talk to me, send me an email, and it offers 2 CEs if you need that. But yeah, I'm going to have that class this weekend on Sunday. I encourage you all, if you're able to come, I would love to have you guys there, because we have these kinds of conversations. We have this real talk, and I think it's the only way that you learn.
100%.
You have to have these conversations. So I would be happy if you guys came. You listeners, if you're out there, if you're hearing me, yeah, go ahead and visit my website, visit my Instagram page. I'm working on putting up more videos and things. But yeah, come and see me on Sunday.
Yes, well, that's the blackout.
And with that said, we're going to need you back. We definitely, this is not the end. They're going to be upset with us if we can't get you back. But I'm going to invite you for the podcast. So y'all, if y'all want to hear her, I think our next visit from her is going to be on our podcast. So y'all going to have to subscribe to the podcast. Y'all going to enjoy it. We can be more free in our speech too. Yeah. But
sometimes I cuss a little.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so y'all gonna get that raw. I know y'all enjoyed that too. Yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in as always. And remember, Black women, we love you.
Aww. And Black men, we love you. And Black child, you are golden. And until next time, you guys, peace.
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 I love that.